and juicy marketing fun stuff. So if you'd like to join us live, which we really love when you guys do that, sellerroundtable.com/live. You get to interact with us. You get to ask questions as we're doing the podcast, all that fun stuff. So join us right now if you are not in, and we are about to begin. All right, Amy. Oh, wait, you're on your laptop, so you probably can't. I will definitely remember to record this time.
You guys, he tells me that every time. He says, Amy, make sure that you remember to record. And he never forgets to record. He never forgets.
My mouse is over the record button right now. So if I blow it this time, like it's time to hang up the mic. The mic needs to be hung up, and we need to be done with it. So.
I believe in you.
All right. Here we go. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Andy Arnott with
Amy Weiss.
And this is Seller Roundtable number 149. We're super stoked to have Andrew Morgans on. Andrew, welcome.
What's up, everybody? Happy to be here.
I first have to start out by complimenting your name. Your parents were very smart in giving you that name. It's distinguished, and I like it a lot.
Well, thank you very much. From another Andy, I appreciate that. I've actually lived like 3 lives. I went through an Andy as a kid. Trauma killed that one. I killed that one. And then I went to Andrew, real professional, just like hold it together. And now I'm kind of on the Drew side. Like, I guess I just met different people in the world, and someone started calling me Drew, and I allowed it. So that's
there we go. Yeah, see, I kind of went the opposite. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
What a versatile name. I never thought about it that way. Like Andrew, Andy, or Drew. I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So mine was the opposite. When I was growing up, people tried to call me Drew, and I hated it. And I went by Andrew. And then as I got into college, I just got tired of writing it out and telling people like, Andy was the shortcut. And then when I met my wife, she was like, well, what do people call you? And I'm like, oh, either one's fine. So she started calling me Andrew. And then she was mad that everybody else called me Andy. So
she wanted something special. She's like, why did you tell me Andrew if it's Andy? And
exactly. Yeah. She actually just told that story yesterday. I'm like, dude, what do you want from me? Like, I didn't force you. I told you whatever. I don't care. Anyway, we digress. So Andrew, I would love to know, or Drew, sorry, I'm going to use your.
They're all good.
Same here. That's why I'm like, I really don't care. You, as long as you don't call me a-hole, I'm fine with any nickname you give me. So we would love to know the backstory, Andrew, on we like to call it street cred, but just kind of your journey till today, maybe born and raised, kind of how you kind of got to where you are today.
Well, thank you. I like this chance, like on, I run my own podcast, and I love this opportunity, just getting to know people. We talk Amazon, we talk e-commerce all day, every day. And, but all those businesses, all those brands, all those stories start with a person, and something that made them want to be an entrepreneur or want to get onto Amazon, or find maybe as an accident. And I think that's what makes podcasts so great, is the opportunity to just get introduced. So I will share that. I was born in Montreal, actually. So an Andre, I can't even roll my R because I'm tongue tied, but there's another pronunciation of the name as well, Andre with an asterisk, I guess. And so I'm a dual citizen. My parents were there learning French for 10 years or so. I went to Cameroon before I was 3. From Cameroon, went to Moscow to Botswana to Congo, and some trips to Kansas City in between there to visit family and regroup and things like that. So I spent the majority of my childhood around the world. Ended with Congo. Congo was in a war at the time in the 90s. I came back in 2001. It was a crazy time. There was assassination. There was evacuation, of which we didn't go. There was just crazy time. Friends getting shot, people going missing. If you know anything about Africa in that time, it was, after the stuff in Rwanda and the losing armies went into Congo, and you can't even explain it in 15 hours, really. There's books on it. So just a crazy time that honestly changed my life forever, and honestly gave me a lot of the tools that I use as an entrepreneur today. Yes, there was some like negative effects, but there was a lot of positives, and way to think outside the box. And even embracing Amazon when a lot of people are not, I think came from that kind of just upbringing of just being outside the box and fixing stuff instead of walking away from it. When you're in the middle of a jungle, or where you can't just get that extra charger, your remote on your Xbox or whatever the case might be, your controller, you just fix things. You learn to fix things and fix problems. And so it turned me into a problem solver, I think, at its core. Regardless of what I'm working on, I think that's my thing. That's my passion, is solving problems. I like solving problems. So we'll fast forward a little bit. I'm 16, come back to Kansas City. 2 years in high school, did horrible, just did not adapt well. My dad was really, really sick. That's why we left. Just imagine coming out of a war zone to like one of the safest communities in the Midwest as far as schools, school districts and stuff like that. So racism, had never experienced that, all types of things, and just didn't adapt well. I went at 18, my parents were now in Hawaii. I went to Hawaii and started college there. University of Hawaii, absolutely loved it. Hawaii was my speed. It was beautiful and gorgeous and slower. That's the one thing about Africa versus, you know, the Western society, is speed of everything. And I fell in love with Hawaii, the beauty and the people, and they're more accepting of outsiders than Kansas City was at the time. And it's confusing because I look like I should be in Kansas City, right? My family is from Oklahoma. Like, you know, we've been in America a very long time. But my soul is not necessarily white Caucasian, you know? And so there's this confusion going on in me as a person, as like we all have probably at that age, but also just add to that the complexity of like, who are my people and where do I fit in, and how do I adapt to this society when I know all these other things about how the world's living. And so I'm in Hawaii 3.5 years, almost 4 years. Wasn't through school yet, another family emergency, and dad goes back home to take care of his dad. And so I wasn't planning on that, was like in school, making like lifelong friendships, come back to Kansas City, enrolled in school in computer science here in Kansas City, which kind of got me into the tech space, and started touring full time in a band. I had grown up playing music, and in Africa, music is everything. A little bit different kind of music, but you're still just like around music all the time. And it's the one thing that's free, right? And it brings joy. And when people don't have money and work and things like that, music is free to everyone, you know? And so it was something just very passionate about me. As someone chasing freedom, I saw this ability to create and travel and experience the world. I'm the first in my family to get a college degree. So some of my visions, even for what was possible, were pretty small at the time. You know, it was just quality of life was what I was chasing for, not any kind of money or anything like that. Is this okay? Sharing this? Is this like, I don't know how it usually goes on a show. All right, I'm taking a little bit of time. But
No. I actually, most people don't take this long, but I actually really love the backstory. To me, that's that's kind of the meat and potatoes. You know, we usually have guests back on, so when you come back on, we can do more of, you know, tactics and things like that. But I think that to get to know someone on a little deeper level, to me, is always a lot of fun.
All right, well, just making sure it's okay. I promise we'll get to something at a higher level. But like, how does someone become an Amazon expert? How does someone become a brand strategist leading some of the biggest brands in the world at this time, at least on these marketplaces? That's what a lot of the industry leaders in this space are doing. We all come from different backgrounds, and yet we're in this position to be leading an industry worldwide. Where does that come from, right? And to me, that's it's complex, and it's this grateful thing that I have to understand kind of where I've come from and where we're positioned today. So
I love, you know, when we think about the most successful people in our industry, outside of our industry, in business in general, it is those people with stories, with a wide background, with barriers that they had to overcome, you know, like that's what it's all about, right? Being not afraid to fail, not, you know, being aware of what's around. And so, yeah, I love your background, that you've you've lived in so many different environments, in different cultures. And it's crazy. Andy over here with the Hawaii side of things too. And Andy came from Hawaii, so it's crazy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was kind of smiling when you were saying that, because I was actually born and raised there. I'm third generation. My grandmother was raised there. She came over when she was 2 years old on the Big Island. Because my grandfather was a engineer, and he helped fix the machines like on the the sugarcane plantations. So yeah, they came from Scotland when she was 2, and so my dad was born and raised there. I was born and raised there. Got to live through a lot of the, my family got to live through a lot of the history. My grandmother was a nurse during Pearl Harbor, and so all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, it was, I really appreciate growing up in Hawaii because it was a different world in terms of, like you said, one of the most accepting places on the planet. Everybody's such a mix of cultures. Everyone just kind of, was kind and community driven and things like that. But the Big Island's a lot different. When a lot of people go to Hawaii, they go to like Oahu, right, or something like that. And not to say Oahu's not a beautiful place, but it's just different than if you go to some of the outer islands where it's not as dense and people aren't crammed in together. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, 100%. All of those islands, much like the states, even in the greater US, are just completely different. Oahu had racism, 100%. There's a lot of it, actually. It still was a better place for me than Kansas City at the time. And I'm someone that's always felt like an immigrant in a lot of ways, while I'm blessed to be an American and grateful to be American at the same time. I've had that kind of that challenge, those roadblocks of like a normal immigrant, I think, even in mindset to opportunities to income, so Hawaii was a place that I just felt, there was a lot of respect. Like if you cut somebody off, you're saying apologies, you're thanking them, you're like, hey, it's okay, hang loose, shaka, like, that kind of stuff is how Africa rolls. And, in Kansas City, it's not like that. So and Kansas City is one of the nicer places in the greater US as far as like Midwestern people and politeness. So just big changes as you're moving around and figuring out like, how do you fit in and what do you want to do? And, you're talking about, growing up in all these different environments. And I think, Amy, that that has led to me being a disruptor in business in a different environment. That is e-commerce. It's a disruptor to a lot of ways the business has been done in the past. It's the great equalizer in that you can be anyone from anywhere. And if you're the best at it, at what you do, you're winning when it comes to e-commerce. So it's created a lot of successful people that come from stories because of that. And so for me, just, think about how many, I've been in the space 11 years. I've had thousands of conversations. If I've worked with 300 brands, I've probably talked to 3,000, or I don't know what the number would be, a ton, and so a ton of rejection, a ton of like, well, we can't do it this way, a ton of like, that's not the way we've always done it, a ton of don't want to change, resistance. And yet here we are in 2022 at an industry that's possibly one of the hottest in the world in regards to attention from capital and banking and brand strategists and you name it. So it takes disruptors and it takes people from different environments to really bring change, I think, versus embracing things the way they always were. That's a side note, but I do feel like that's why maybe like my brain, worked a certain way in being able to see these things as opportunities instead of roadblocks, the e-commerce stuff. So I'm going to get back to the story just to fast forward to where we get to Marknology, but essentially I am in Hawaii. I come back, I'm in the band. I chased that kind of all the way 4 or 5 years. I was playing professionally, touring the US, doing it, in regards to opening for big bands that I've dreamed of and playing some great stages and was creating products. So it was like really my first brand that before I even knew what I was doing, but we were, we were creating t-shirts and branding and album art, and music is a product as well. It's just a packaged product, right? And then you have the distribution of it, supply chain, you have the sales that's happening on the road at shows, the booking, if you're booking your own shows and don't have a manager, there's so much stuff you're doing that at the time we were taking it very, very, very seriously. We were really trying to make it. The guys I was with were hardcore, but it was a stepping stone for like getting into the branding and creative and strategy later in e-commerce and kind of taking a lot of what I had learned during those years into this. So I essentially fell in love, got tired of being poor, wanted to take care of them. And so I used my degree that I'd been getting at the time, which was computer science, networking, and security. And there weren't a lot of degrees at the time. There definitely wasn't an e-commerce degree or a digital marketing degree or anything like that. It was like you're a programmer, or you're in networking, or you're in security, or you're in general IT, pretty much. And those sucked. Like, let's be honest, those sucked, but I was really good at it. And so I was doing the creative thing and had no money. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do the brain thing and get paid because I can do both. And so that's kind of my thinking, as shallow as it was. And it was like, I didn't want to be 30, and no offense to anyone listening, I didn't want to be 30 and in a band at the time, which was like a long run up. I was like, if I get to that point, I want to have a backup plan. And that's why I was staying in school. And instead I fell in love before I got to 30, and I started that job. Well, I find myself at MasterCard working in a network operations control center, a NOC. And before long, it was very intimidating because I barely studied while I was touring. I just passed classes because it was easy. And so I'm like, oh God, I guess I have to do this job for real in the real world behind a massive bank. But it wasn't long, and I was crushing it. I was doing as well as anyone else there, making more money than I ever had. And I just realized, like, I hate this. This is where, like, I see people go to die. You just sit and wait on a network to break, and then you fix it. And the other 10 hours a day, you're sitting there. Amazon and e-commerce is complete opposite of that. Just for perspective, it's absolutely, you can do the most. You can be as proactive as you want. So you can see how that the counter between the two, like, I'd spent so much time learning how to be reactive and like reverse engineer problems and 6 programming languages. And then I found in e-commerce that's like proactive. You can add more graphics, or you can create these kits or bundles, or like, there's just so much you could do to impact a victory. Right. And I'm a super competitive person. So, first it was eBay and it was different things. When I found Amazon, and I was like, wow, there's actually like a lot of things you can do here. I just got super excited. I left the band, got a job in e-commerce at a startup, did $1 million in sales plus on Amazon and eBay. This was like 11 years ago. Car parts, and nothing was online at the time. Took a pay raise and a position raise as an e-commerce manager at a medium-sized toy retailer managing 4 brands. And internally there, I saw what brands were going to have to deal with on Amazon, whereas everyone else was maybe like private label seller or working for a big brand or manufacturer. I was at this medium-sized retailer hearing all these internal conversations about map pricing and resellers and distribution issues, and me taking money from the sales guys, and the buyer not having time to write good product information by the time it gets to my department, and customer service not making Amazon a priority, and all these issues that maybe you would only see or have that perspective if you worked inside a company like at that level. And it just made me pursue this agency stuff a little different. I'm going to pause right there. I want to give you guys time to talk, and I feel like I'm taking forever. But I feel like that beginning was really what started Marknology.
No, I love that. And yeah, I started around the same time, and kind of stumbled into it as well. I was in a highly specialized field, and it was, but I think a big common kind of thing that I've seen for the people that are really successful in the online world, not necessarily even e-commerce, but like the marketing, the podcasting, the YouTube channels, all those things is, number one, create people who are creative, but also mixed with some kind of technical knowledge, right? Because selling on Amazon today, you can't be like, I love my dad, but he can barely turn on his tablet, right? He barely can get into his email. You can't survive in the Amazon world today unless you have, at least a baseline of some technical skills. And yeah, a lot of the higher end Amazon people I see come from the technology space, because Amazon is getting to the point where you really have to be savvy in that stuff, or it's going to be a lot harder. Now, not to say you can't hire somebody, to help you. That's why people, consultants exist. But just, if you were kind of in the early days of Amazon, just starting out, you need to know how to turn dials. You need to know, a little bit of HTML and spreadsheets,
Photoshop, and a little
exactly.
Excel,
Like you kind of had to be a jack of all trades in the technology world, because if you weren't, somebody else who was, would come into your space as a competitor and just destroy you, right? So
with repricing software, with some kind of algorithm fix. And, you set me up perfectly for this, because my company name is Marknology. Okay. And people are like, they call me Mark, or they think something like that. It's not Andrewology or Andyology. Okay. It's Marknology, because I believe that e-commerce sit at the intersection of marketing and technology. And that's really where e-commerce is putting both of those into play. You can't just have the marketing piece or marketing piece. You can't just have the technology piece. It's a combination of both. It's the art and the science. It's the, art and the technical side. And it also is a cheap domain. So I just saw Nike and Uber and everybody else doing it. And I'm like, that sounds way cheaper than going and buying a domain with technology in the name. But no, really, that is the thinking behind that name, is like, you need both. And I think you're right. When I look at even the space now, what I see is a lot of the innovators, a lot of the early movers on Amazon, a lot of the like experts that built software. Those guys ended up building software, not on the services side, for SaaS, or I built this for me and I wanted to be able to help you kind of thing. Or you have these people that are great at supply chain and sourcing and like identifying good products and like good profitability. And then they're like, you're asking me to build a brand? Like, I know all of the technical, tactical stuff, but like the storytelling piece, this creative piece, oh my God, there's a problem. Well, creativity fixes problems. Let's be honest. So, and you have to know the tech, but I do believe that that's one of the things where Marknology is trying to stand out, and not to make it a sales pitch or anything, but it was just like of the people working in this space, like in 14, 15, it was get a good product with a good supply chain and good quality that's going to get good reviews. And, you do these kinds of things and you'll be successful. Well, 7 years later, that creative, that storytelling, that branding, those elements are really what's making the difference on being successful on Amazon or not today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually leads perfectly into my kind of next question is, so, there's still a lot of people who are, have gotten into Amazon, and, a lot of people are not successful. What do you see as some of the major roadblocks in terms of, these small mom and pops who are coming into Amazon, because they, either they've done their research and they know that it's going to be kind of a struggle and they just haven't quite found their way yet, or you have the other people who have been kind of, coaxed into it by seeing all these, people who are supposedly making a ton of money, with the Lambos and stuff, where it's just kind of show to get them to buy their course or whatever. What do you see as some of the kind of basics or some of the paths that people should be taking early on right now, or or along their journey to, if they haven't had success yet?
Well, I think those are great questions, number one. And I have a lot of thoughts on those. One thing I think that is a little different about our generation versus the younger generation, or anyone really, it's not even about age. I remember sitting next to my buddies playing video games for hours on the games were hard back then. They were really hard. And we would all sit there kind of like streaming today. And all three of us would sit there and try to solve these strategy games together. And we'd sit there and like, you try this level. Oh no, try this. It's the water temple on Zelda. It was like, you needed these walkthroughs, and it was like really hard and you spent tons of time, but we loved it. It wasn't like something that we were like, oh, this is hard, avoid it. It was like, this is the game. This is what games are. And it's like, it's that same kind of person that's honestly been innovating on Amazon and e-commerce with tech, with new stuff, trying all those technical things and innovations. It's the same kind of personality type. And so for that, I say, it takes time to be great at anything or to be good at anything. It takes time and effort. And so you have to have patience. One, it's good to know, like, if you feel like you have a really good plan or a roadmap or a strategy, trust that plan, get validation when you need it, or guidance, but just stick to the plan. And when you get a chance to leapfrog or grab an opportunity, not a hack, not a shortcut, but if you're brand building, it takes time. The other thing, so that patience play is super, how many people I see abandon ship way before it's time. It's like Rome wasn't built in a day. No one trusts a brand overnight. I don't care if you have $1 billion, no one cares. It's what have you done consistently over time? Your product is the same over time. Like even Nike, like, not to bash them, but you know how many times I bought a product at Nordstrom Rack or at the Champ store or at the Nike outlet or wherever, and like the shirt I have is not the same size, not the same consistency. There's some products of Nike I love. Like I'm a Nike customer, like the dry fit stuff when it first came out, and the fits, they just feel amazing in the gym. And then I'll get this other shirt and it just feels like it was made somewhere else with different consistency, different fabrics. Using that as an example for people maybe that can understand that, to say, if that was how they started, Nike wouldn't be Nike, right? Like they've been a consistent brand and they're not headed the right direction right now. So it's like, you have to be like, as an agency, I have a brand and a reputation and consistency, and I'm standing out from all those gurus. And I've been on a trajectory to do that for the last 8 years, because I realized what was in the space. There's going to be a lot of people running to these courses that do it yourself, or it's super easy. And I'm selling that it's super hard, and it takes time and patience, and it takes authenticity and transparency and all these kinds of things. That's why my story's out there. That's why my brand on my website, lays out what we've done, because it's about, in this space, as an agency, to stand out in brand. It was about being the opposite of them. So to those people looking to hire, I say, look around and, do your due diligence and find, ask around, look around, talk to them yourself. If it's something sounds too easy, it probably is, because this isn't about easy.
I love what you said about consistency and not quitting around the first, just because you put a product out there, and it's maybe not perfect the first go round, or maybe, you get through 2 months and it's still not selling well. And you're just like, oh man, I mean, exactly. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes time and consistency. And sometimes the fixes are really simple things like optimizing your listing, or maybe you just don't have the right SEO, or whatever it is. But like, those little tweaks that you make could change everything for you. And if I think about all the times when I was like, oh, this is not working, I'm spending way too much money on advertising, like in the very beginning when I was lost, like the things that I learned, just little things over time, they made such a big difference. And then I compiled those, and over time, now I know what a successful launch looks like.
Yeah.
But back then I didn't. And so it's really, I think it's so important, like you said, to just learn and be consistent and keep growing, and know that as long as you're following that policy, you're not just quitting from the beginning, that you can be successful. Now, what I would love to ask you is about advertising, because there's the landscape has really changed on Amazon and in e-commerce in general, in terms of just so many people, so many, even like primarily brick and mortar retail brands are now pivoting to e-commerce. Like, there's so many people entering the e-commerce space, especially since COVID. And this has really put an especially larger, people bidding on advertisements and stuff like that. So what do you see in terms of advertising strategies along with branding working best today? And what do you recommend for people?
Great question, Amy. And it is that consistency piece. I think one thing that I always say is, I've been doing this 11 years, 300 plus brands. Like, it's, to me, I'm more of the personality type to like take a leap and then figure it out as I go, because I know that perfect isn't a thing. It's subjective. There's no perfect launch. And what I've learned is, like, I've launched a brand and the first 3 SKUs were like struggle, struggle, struggle. We launched the 4th one and then boom, it's success. Or we're struggling in the US, then we get into Canada, month 18, and then boom, we're top sellers in Canada. And it's like, what you do is you just keep going and you just keep pushing and learning. And it's like, I need to learn these things. I know I'm not going to learn them about this product or this launch until we do it. And then I'm going to learn on the fly. And I know that that's different types of leadership style, or whatever you want to call that. But I think that on Amazon, that's the mindset to have, at least, where you take action, you make a move, you adjust. And so it not working is the learning that you need right there. Why is it not working? Pay attention to that, and you'll figure out why. That's how I feel about it. The yeses and the success tells me one thing, and the no's tell me one thing. And the difference of just seeing 300 plus is a lot more attempts at bat, to see what works and what doesn't. So kind of like, just to piggyback on that. And then in the advertising side, we just get tired. We figure something out. We want to hold it. We're like, oh my God, okay, I figured this advertising thing out, and I'm cruising. But the thing is we've chosen an industry that changes constantly. And we need to just accept that and remind ourselves about that all the time. And if it's not for you and you get tired of learning and you're exhausted, just go do something else that stays more consistent. But if you're going to say in the e-commerce world, whether it's Amazon, whether it's podcasting, whether it's social media, you guys see how much just social media has changed in the last 5 years, from TikTok coming about. That wasn't a thing. Instagram adding videos. It's like Snapchat. And on and on and on. There's a Clubhouse comes out, and so it's always changing, it's always innovating. That's always going to be the case. I think I knew that, and so I started building a team instead of being a consultant, because I knew that I couldn't learn all these things constantly. My brain was going to explode, and that I knew the basics, and I needed a team that could obsess about those things all the time, and a younger team, because I didn't want to constantly be a student my entire life in that regard, of the technical details. So for one, it is like having a culture, or just being aware and accepting what field you're in, or like, you know, what you're in, and this is part of the game. This is the fun. This is why we choose it, and you either love that or you hate that, or saying, hey, I'm not the greatest at all these things. We need to learn all these things. I'm going to take a step back and build a team that can help me do that, because that's not my strength. I think it's one of those two aspects. When you go into e-commerce kicking and screaming, maybe as a brand or a manufacturer, you don't want to do it, but leadership's making you do it. Those are the worst. It's going to be, you know, the hardest time and the most frustrating time. So that's just like a little bit of, you know, framing, I think there, that's important when you think about what we're doing. And if you're tailored to that, that's why my personality, I think, has excelled here, is because of just like how I am as a person. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm very competitive, but I'm not a perfectionist. So it allows me to take action, adjust, and that's where I get my like confidence and my strength.
Love it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I wanted to jump back really quick and kind of highlight something that you mentioned Nike, and you mentioned authenticity, and kind of like being a small brand that, you have to start out and make sure that you're really, nailing, all those kinds of things, and to not give up too soon. But the other thing that I always love to mention when it comes to that is, you mentioned, Nike, and I always pick on Stanley Tools and some of these major brands that are selling on Amazon and elsewhere, is they're technically at a disadvantage right now. If you're coming in as a small brand, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're crazy. They have a bigger budget and all these things." And yes, that part is true. But what you don't realize is that as a small brand, you can, you don't have all these boards and red tape and all these different levels of organization to get through to launch a new product, right? Or to to kind of pivot onto a new category or whatever it is. And you also mentioned social media. So say you see a trend on social media, you start researching, you look at Google Trends, start looking at Twitter, you really do your research, and you figure out, oh wow, whatever this is, this new microwave egg mixer, or this TikToker who's doing something that you could maybe build a device to do, that they've kind of hacked together or something like that. You can get that together and launch it and beat a market in, a matter of weeks if you're really good, or, a month or two, and get to the market and push it out there, and be able to really be agile. And that's what I really love about being a small brand.
I think that honestly, I'm even contemplating if the massive brands can be successful at e-commerce at their current speed, and that me as an agency might need to focus on medium, small, medium, not because I don't want the best in the business, but because they can't execute at the level I need to execute, unless they give me that kind of like CIA special forces clearance to just go into their business and do things as we need to do that without having to go up the chain of command and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure that success is possible in regards to like moving quickly and doing those kinds of things in the same way that a small brand does, because I've been beating the big brands for years. I mean, mom and pop brands outranking for things like chocolate chip cookies out of some of the biggest brands in the world, the Nestle's and the whoever. Doesn't matter. I'm outperforming them on Amazon. And that's why the small brands have made Amazon a big push and the big brands haven't cared, is that the small brands were gaining market share on these brands and getting an opportunity. And because they were desperate and hungry and ambitious, they were willing to do those things. So even Marknology, it's something I think about. I think about the future all the time, where I'm going with it. And as I build my team and we're vertically integrate all of that, I can't get too big that I lose the creativity piece because I get so processed. And then I lose the collaboration between the teams because we create all these separate departments, and I get too slow because it's actually speed and innovation. That's my greatest strength in e-commerce and on the Amazon space. So, whenever every single time that Amazon has come about with I'm going to get back to this advertising thing, Amy, because it all ties in together, but it's a big play. How do you win? That's one thing about Marknology being here in the Midwest, not having a connection to big brands with big top of funnel, is that we've been sharpening our teeth on all of these brands with low budgets, with no top of funnel, and learning really what it takes to build a brand from the ground up with no budget. And you give me a big brand with a big budget and watch me work. Like, I've already learned how to do it with the small brands and with no advertising budget and things like that, including my own business. I'm a bootstrap business that comes from in debt, like after a divorce, and was trying to figure myself out and started side hustling and turned it into this business. And now I run massive budgets for all types of companies. But the advertising piece ties into the speed and innovation. Okay, so for one, like everybody coming to the space is a benefit to me as an agency owner. Okay, as a brand builder, because now we have all of these eyes on our space. They're actually paying for our services, what we do at a high level. They're bringing up the value of what we do as a companies. And that's why there's all this demand to buy the brands. And this short term, what I feel like influx on everything all across the board. We had the pandemic happen. We've had aggregators come into the space. We've had big brands. What I think is happening with the big manufacturers and the big brands is they're starting to hire people like me or Andy or you internally. Those people are then sitting behind a big corporation like a Nike. Let's say Nike doesn't have the Amazon, backlash that they've had, but let's say it's a Nike, and they're there and they're like, okay, we're using these outsourced partners to solve for Amazon. They're running our ads, they're getting our data, they are making it easy for us. We've never had to actually go D2C in that model. We're actually just still selling wholesale to these partners. We haven't tried to change anything. We get our money up front. Accounting doesn't have to change. Easy, 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 easy. Well, they get the right expert internally, which is what's happening as the industry grows, that now these people are hiring at a high level and making budgets for that. And that all takes time. And then those contracts with those partners are ending and they're looking to it. And those people internally, those smart people, men, women, are saying, why aren't we getting our own data? Why isn't this outsourced partner thinking about the other 20% of our products or the other 80% of our products, whatever it might be? Oh, they're only caring about the ones that are moving inventory, and they're only moving inventory because of top of funnel brand awareness. And you get someone internally that can kind of piece that puzzle back together from ads, from customer information, from the follow-up, from all that kind of stuff. And you get a brand or a manufacturer that actually cares about the customer feedback loop and understanding what those customers are saying about their products for the first time and understanding how valuable that information is, including the ads information. Then I think you're going to get these big businesses treating Amazon and e-commerce and holism like completely different, because they just haven't had an internal advocate, if that makes sense. So all these things are all tying into what we're seeing today, which is smaller brands having a hard time, more ad spend because they don't actually know how to brand build with organic SEO and follow up and all of that. So they're just dumping it into PPC. Well, we have to adjust. Okay. So what that means exactly in a tactical, I don't know exactly what to tell you, but it means that we have to adjust. To me, that's off Amazon efforts. Your PPC remains the same. Maybe you stop dialing up. Your strategy has to be very sound, from SEO to PPC to all of that. And then it's, what can we do off Amazon? Off Amazon has incentivized us with 10% kickbacks if we're doing that well. Influencers have been a thing for a very long time. I've been experimenting with influencers for 8 years since I started, my own companies. I created my own company, Landlocked, at the same year I started Marknology, so I could just test and practice all of my things on my own brand. Instead of just telling people what to do, I wanted to do it myself and figure out what messaging 10 people on Instagram a day was like, or 20 people a day on Instagram was like, and how to get blogs to repost my stuff. And so I spend a ton of my time creating partnerships or finding the best talent in all of those areas that I'm not, because we're innovating on Amazon, we're doing our thing, but I'm not obsessing about TikTok. I'm not obsessing about, email and Klaviyo. Like, I know how important they are. I've worked with big brands that have utilized them, or small brands that have been amazing with, unboxing videos and things like that, and made them really work. And I've learned on their dimes. And now it's me saying, okay, let's take this. Let's say we have a 10,000 PPC budget a month. Let's take that down to 7 or 6, and let's go spend 2 here and 2 here and go learn. And these are the best people I know in the space to try to do that. And then how do we make that holistic? So I think it's just, it's adjusting and realizing that every time there's a pain point or there's an obstacle or a speed bump, like when Amazon just removed the ability to do giveaways for ranking, for reviews. And honestly, at the beginning, I didn't even know that was Black Hat. Now I think about it completely differently. I'm an Amazon partner. I work with big brands. It's all about I had to learn what gets you in trouble to learn how to keep you out of trouble, honestly. And so it's really every time this kind of happens, okay, aggregators are in this space, greater opportunity to show how great we do in operations and how hard the stuff is, and things like that. They give away the reviews. Okay, great opportunity to show the world what I've been trying to scream to them, that organic SEO on Amazon is a real thing. I'm telling you, there was a time when no one believed that it was even a thing. And I was just like, this has to be a thing. How could it not be a thing? How do customers find these products? It's not just ads, because ads weren't there at one point, right? So these things, like, I don't always know what to do whenever there's like a disruption in our space, but with 11 years in, what I do know is that it will work itself out, and the best of us will evolve and figure out what's the next thing, or how to make what they're doing work. Because what Amazon's doing as a parent company is really trying to create an awesome platform for customers. That I do believe that. I think they try to be lean and automate and all this stuff, but it's about the customer experience. It's about customers getting the right products. And if you understand that's at the core, I think it'll shake out. So I know it's a lot, but big questions, honestly, and stuff I'm really passionate about. I hear so many people come with fear or no's and stuff around this space. And really just means you need to lean in a little harder.
Awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about, hey, we've expanded to Canada and now we're number one in Canada. And, I'd like to go back to that for a minute. International expansion is something that people are hesitant about. Obviously, like, for example, Amazon recently added a tool where you can see what your growth opportunity in different countries is. And I looked at mine the other day for one of my products, and it has the highest score Amazon can give it in Germany and the UK. It has a score of 1,000. And I saw a post in a Facebook group the other day about, like, what does that even mean? My score's 1,000. What does that even mean? So, I think it's difficult to decide when to expand, but with your experience in trying different marketplaces out, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you make the decision of when it's time to try selling in another marketplace? How do you weigh the pros and cons, the opportunity cost, that kind of thing? How should people be thinking about international expansion?
Great question. And I know that you are a huge advocate of sourcing in Latin America and running I think the first ever trade show is coming up. You'll have to give that a plug. Like, I'm excited about that. I think that's like absolutely the future. And I don't always say that. So I just absolutely believe that you guys are on to like the right stuff right now. So if I can give that my credibility, like, I mean, that is the move. If you're a brand, if you're anytime you're as a business owner, you have a single point of failure, that's a problem. Like, that's just common business, whether it's Amazon or anything. So if you have one manufacturer, one place that you can source, that's a problem. You should be thinking about a second or a third. If you have one warehouse manager or one guy to handle your warehousing, you need two or three. You need a backup plan. So in all of those aspects, I think that that's one way to think about it. Any kind of business, right? Anytime you have a business you're trying to scale and have a single point of failure, it's a mistake. Or as soon as you start working on that. So that'd be my answer on when to know it's time. What I'd also say is think about international expansion in the same way you would launch any business or project. To expect profitability immediately is silly. Like, I think that's even what people think is, I want to put this product up and start making money right away because I saw it on YouTube. Well, it doesn't work that way, guys. Like, it takes time to get there. It's called a path to profitability. Like, read a little bit, take some time to understand. If you have expectations that this is going to be 6 months to really get this up, and we might see profitability at 6 months when we get stuff dialed in, you're going to be a lot happier and a lot more patient as you're waiting on that thing to happen. So even with international expansion, use your tools, ask around. But I was putting product on Amazon before the tools existed, so I didn't really have those to go off of, and still got a lot of success. So in some ways, I'm like, the tools can help build confidence, because data builds confidence in your decision making. But also, You can go off gut. You can go off a lot of other tools and market research and things like that to know. Like, for example, Australia has opposite seasonality. That makes a lot. That's common sense. Common sense. It's hot when it's cold. It's cold when it's hot. You have a seasonal product. It might be a great fit for you there. It's also English. You don't have to worry about translations, all those things. All that changes that the problem or the hard part about international is at the beginning. Versus like, meaning it's like that paperwork, that tax stuff. Why? So how have I been solving that? Trying to find the right partners to help with that, because I hate doing it. Have I done it? Yes, I hate doing it. Right. So in that aspect, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of see, is this right? Is this wrong? But look at the size of them. If PPC is a problem, well, you have to work harder. It's like, my time is way more valuable now than when I started. Okay. Didn't have a dollar amount attached to it. I would work on projects on Upwork for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours for a couple $100 because I was solving the problem. And what I was getting out of it was the solution that I would end up figuring out for them. And that was the prize to me. I think in the same way, okay, you have a situation where you can't spend advertising dollars. You have a very low budget. Your ad dollars aren't working. Your US market is decreasing. Well, that might be a sign that it's a good time, because the PPC budgets on TikTok, or the PPC, they're giving free money, or the PPC budgets on Canada or AU are all lower than the US, so these are the kind of things where it can be circumstantial, and there's no like one broad advice. But I would say, just like, if you're in the US and your listings look like crap and you're not doing the most, it's not time to expand, right? This is almost like assumed that your US listings and account is like where it should be. Maybe there's like a little bit 10% up, you could improve or whatever, but like status quo, you're there and you're looking to expand. And then look at your averages.
I love your advice there, because you're not just talking about sales channels expansion. You're thinking about like, never have your eggs on one basket. Even Amazon, like never just sell on Amazon, like always have other sales channels, never advertise only on Amazon, always work to that. And thank you for queuing up my plug for the Mexico trip. Everybody, if you haven't heard, we're going to Mexico, June 4th to the 12th. We are putting together the first ever trade show in Mexico City to connect micro brands with micro manufacturers. And so you guys can join us. You can head over to the mexicotrip.com, and we'd love to see you guys in Mexico in June. And I'm going to pass it over to Andy to ask our favorite motivational questions before we wrap up the show.
Yeah. So Drew, what are you listening to right now? Anything that's kind of changed the game in terms of, podcast or book, or, something that you're doing in your daily routine, anything that's kind of changed the game for you lately?
Well, one has been being a podcast host. I just get it, like, as a host versus a guest, it's a completely different, interaction. And as a host, I just get to talk to all these brilliant minds around the globe, about what they're doing, what inspired them, what their story is. And that's honestly got me just like super fueled up. It started in the pandemic and it's just gained momentum. I've gotten better at it, less insecure about it, and so it's getting more comfortable. It's been an awesome time, getting to experience that. But that's a little bit, not everyone can do that. So I want to try to give something that can be more tangible than anybody else. On a personal level, I've been working on boundaries for 3-4 years. I love working, and it's something that when I was at a very low gave me a lot of confidence. And, we've had momentum for like 5 years running as an agency. So it's like, it's always growing and it's always in go mode. And so I'm working on boundaries. Honestly, I am extremely focused on emotional intelligence, and Gary Vee came out with a book, but it was way before that. As a missionary kid, I was just raised a different way. Like, I'm a fourth generation PK. I'm not religious anymore, but that's my pedigree. That's my upbringing. That's what, I'm good at in a lot of ways. And whether that's community or that's just like being in environments where there's kindness is celebrated, and just like, things like that. I'm like, these are my strengths in business. They're not really all seen as strengths right out the gate. But seeing some business leaders really, and as I talk about this, and as I go to conferences, as I see the competition around me in the agency world, as I, it gets more complex and there's more sharks than ever. And, money brings a lot of things, and this space went from being almost like open source community type to there's some real money and some real players, real business minds in this space. It's been, what do I feel like is lacking across the board with some of the most wealthy or the most, the people I meet, and a lot of them are lacking emotional intelligence. And that's something that I'm not saying that in any way to bring anyone down. It's more so reflection to me that these are super important qualities and values and things to focus on. And so how to keep those as in the forefront of my values and my focus. And as we chase more money and more brands and more opportunities and all of these things, how do I keep my values at the forefront of that is a big thing. So I'm consuming as much literature as I can from Gary Vee to David Meltzer to mental health books to on and on and on. I think I'm studying that more than I'm studying marketing strategies or leadership strategies or management strategies. I'm studying emotional intelligence and where my areas for improvement could be. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I love that. One of the things that for me lately that's been a game changer is, I used to always joke when people are like, "Oh yeah, I meditate every day," and I'm like, "Yeah, I have 3 kids. I don't get that," But what I figured out is that's not necessarily true, right? You can make time in your life for anything you really need to, and it just wasn't a priority. Now that I've made it a priority, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Miracle Morning, but my wife and I have been kind of like really into that for the last, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, and that's really made a big difference just in our lives in general. Not thinking that sleeping in is necessarily a treat. Realizing that like sleeping in, you're missing part of the day and you're missing a ton of productivity or things like that. But when you work for yourself, things like that are easy to do, right? If you're like, oh, I can sleep till 8 o'clock today or 9 o'clock today or whatever. That's just because you can do it isn't necessarily the best
Discipline.
thing to do. Right,
Yeah.
right. And then also just, creating goals, visualizing, a lot of stuff of what people would consider like woo woo, right? But to me, unless you get your kind of yourself dialed in, your business will never succeed, right?
That's why this is my focus. Like when you realize that at year 8 of being a full-time entrepreneur, at year 8, I realized that my success lies solely with me and my things to work through, or my areas to grow or change. What got me through the first 4 hasn't got me through the last 4 and won't get me through the next 4. And so keeping myself in a state of mind to embrace change, to focus on areas, and one thing about we were Pentecostal Christian as well, which is just like kind of, it's apostolic. They shout and pray and cry and very emotional type of service. And really kind of realized that a lot of these skills that I was taught could be repurposed for a lot of different things like meditation. And there's something about starting your day with gratitude and calm that can allow you to go into the rest of the day that might be chaos, and having a little piece of calm and starting your day off with thanks, like a prayer would, or gratitude at dinner, are actually very great things to do. And the wealthiest minds and the most brilliant minds in the world all speak to these things as being very, very important. And so at 35, I'm like, I'm not trying to be 55 before I learn these things. I'm not chasing any money. So why not focus on them now? And, I've had a lot of things to work through as a person, I'll be honest with you. And that's why I love entrepreneurship and why I love this industry, even if I can tie it all the way to Amazon, is because it's been because of these things that I've seen the greatest change in my own self, my own life. And that's tied to happiness for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And, there's a reason why people, gravitate towards, Tony Robbins and things like that. Cause, if you really actually get into that and follow a lot of what he's teaching, it's a game changer, right? So it's once you actually get past all the doubt and the naysay and things like that, where you can really make a difference. One of the things that we love to do now is my kids and I on the drive to school in the mornings. We all go around the car and say, oh, what are you grateful for today?
I
And
love
my
that.
kids will be like, oh, that cow over there, and like, because I like hamburgers, or they'll be like, oh, the mountains or whatever. So we just kind of like, and the car ride's fun because for as kids they can just pick stuff out that they're seeing out the window, but it's just getting them in that practice of doing that every day to rather than looking at what's wrong with the world, which these days there's a lot of it, is rather than focusing on that, focusing on things you control and things that are going to be a positive impact for your day rather than negative.
And I think in entrepreneurship, maybe, and especially e-commerce and Amazon and, all the difficulties that come with that, we literally have, I'm evaluating people's problems all day. Like that's my job. Like, I'm an analyst. I analyze and I'm like, what's wrong with this? And how do I fix it? And very important for me to focus on something other than that in my own time. Because otherwise I just nitpick myself. I'm critical of myself. I'm like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my relationships? What's wrong with my dog? What's wrong with my house? What's wrong with my, it just becomes very extremely toxic. And so it becomes like you almost have to be intentional about doing the opposite of that when it's on your time. And I think something that superpower that was given to me was being raised in Africa and seeing people with nothing still be happy. Literally, like the worst environment in the world at that time was Congo. So I've seen the worst of civilization, at least historically during my time. And, for me, when I start feeling that way or whatever, that gratitude thing is magic because I can go all the way to water, clean water. That's where I go with my gratitude. And some people can't do that. And I'm like, where are all the places in this house, this building, this wherever that I can go just get water and drink out of it? Maybe it's not bottled, filtered, whatever, but it will keep me alive. It's drinkable water, at least here in the Midwest. So that's like literally a skill to be able to do that. I think in days where in some days I have back-to-back calls that are just brutal, or something like that. So as an entrepreneur, as Amazon experts, as people trying to build brands in this space, where you're analyzing. I think just being grateful for McDonald's or whatever that case, the hamburger is an amazing thing to teach your kids.
Yeah, definitely. And nothing against my parents because they didn't know any better, but yeah, these are the kinds of things that I think that and our kids go to a school that teaches financial intelligence, right? Which is insane. The fact that we go through school here in America, which is supposed to be the greatest nation in the world, which I still agree that it is. But I feel like we're getting too much into being the Netflix generation, right? Where we don't want to struggle for anything. We want to just get home, after our job that we don't enjoy, eat our dinner and then just plop down and watch Netflix and just kind of veg out, right? Not be intentional on what we're doing every day.
That's the only bit of pleasure you're getting is that Netflix
right,
show.
right.
And that's a problem. That should be
not to say that I do not or have not done that. I am as guilty as anyone. But I think that the in a lot of ways I see COVID as kind of a blessing because I think it really kind of started to wake the world up to being a little bit more intentional on day-to-day life rather than just kind of floating.
Yeah. And like in your time that you just like, whether it's work from home or it's time with your kids or it's time in the yard or it's time with your dogs or it's time with your people and your best friends and everyone else is, you're not seeing them, whatever that focus is, whether it was like on the time part or it was the money part or it was no traffic or people just started being aware of what made them feel something.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, Andrew. Well, I'm going back to your God-given name. At the end of the podcast, even though we kind of went on the evolution there, which was fun. But it's been great talking to you. Really appreciate having you on. At this point, we would love to let people know where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so on Instagram, that's kind of my personal, like where I just like to chat it up at Andrew Morgans. But for business, like that's www.marknology.com. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on the web. You can find us wherever. Would love to chat with anyone. And of course, shameful plug for my podcast, Startup Hustle. There's 4 hosts there. I'm a host on all things e-commerce, Amazon, entrepreneurship. My episodes come out on Tuesday. Would love to have any listeners that enjoyed this or want to learn more, or just trying to find something else to plug their ears into, pop on over to Startup Hustle, say hello. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. All right, Andrew, really appreciate it. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. And as usual, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't join us live in the Zoom meeting today, we would love to see you. I know we missed a couple of lives because of guests being sick and stuff, but don't forget, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, join us live in the live Zoom. We'd love having you guys. sellroundtable.com/live. Remember to rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends who are into Amazon or e-commerce. I swear they're going to get something out of it. And with that, as usual, guys, we'll see you next time on the